So thank you all for joining. My name is Brandon. I am the account manager at Swivl here. And so for today's time, we're going to have just a few things. We're going to start with some introductions, so a little bit more about me and our guest Meagan today. I'm going to give a short overview of the MirrorTalk platform that we'll be going through, or that we'll be talking about that Meagan uses. And then a lot of the time today is just going to be a kind of a me interviewing and having a conversation with Meagan about how she is using the Mirror and the MirrorTalk platforms, and then I will end with some Q&A. If you do have any questions as we're going through, you can drop them in the Q&A chat panel, and I'll look at those at the end. And if there are any questions there, I'll go ahead and answer them at that point. So in terms of introduction, again, my name is Brandon, and I am the account manager here at Swivl. I mainly do the Midwest area, but I also have some West Coast. And I've been in ed tech for about 5 or 6 years, and I was a classroom teacher before that. And then we also have our guest, Meagan Stass McDonald. She is the instructional coach in the Barrington School District. She used to also be a teacher before moving on to being an instructional coach as well. So we're going to go ahead and get started just with a general overview of the MirrorTalk platform. So you have a little bit of a baseline as Meagan's answering questions, just so you kind of understand what the platform itself is. So the MirrorTalk platform is really something, it's a software, it's a piece of software. You can use it on iOS, Android, laptops, Chromebooks, and the Mirror hardware. And what it's going to do is help level up thinking in your coaching program. And it does that through reflection. As we all know, as educators, reflection is a very big part of learning. Unfortunately, a lot of us don't have the time to do that on a regular basis. So Mirror and MirrorTalk are going to help you do that. Big thing to know that it is a talk-based reflection, so people don't have to write anything down. They are essentially having a conversation with their device. It is AI guided, so it's going to take what they said and ask deeper questions there. And it's kind of like they're having a conversation with their device. Coaches can put in different teaching standards or objectives for them to reflect on. And then what it's going to do is help teachers analyze and enhance their instructional choices. So it's really going to allow a lot of feedback and feedback loops, specifically with the coach and the teacher themselves. And it's going to give that teacher some immediate feedback and insights. So once they've gone through one of the reflections, they're typically about 3 to 5 minutes, depending on how many questions there are. It's going to give them some instant scoring and feedback, and then it'll help them assess their thinking patterns. So every time one of your teachers goes through a reflection, they're going to get a little feedback card that looks like this. So it's going to have kind of a quote that takes out from what they said, give them some positive information, and then maybe things to think on or things they might want to work on after that. Another great thing is going to help your instructional coaches track progress over time. So things like their understanding of the concept that you want them to work on, their zone of proximal development, their mindset, their tone. It's going to help you really track all of that over time. And a great thing is that you're able to create groups that you're working with. So maybe it's first-year teachers, maybe it's your math teachers because you have a new math curriculum this year. Maybe you have specific PLCs you're working on. However you might want to group those teachers, you're able to do that. Or even could be a goal that you want them to work on. Maybe these are the teachers that you want to work on better classroom management. You can put them in those groups and you can track those groups over time as a group and as specific individuals. And one of the most valuable things, and this is actually fairly new, it's only come out in the last couple months, it's going to be a team learning summary. And that is going to allow the coaches to get a summary of basically what the reflections are talking about in that group. So while the coach does have the ability to go through there and read or listen to every reflection and read all the feedback cards, they don't have to do that. In order to save time, they can just get a summary of what the entire group is looking at. And then it'll provide you recommended next steps. As we all know, as being educators, time is a valuable commodity. So being able to look at a card like this and then go from there and know what you might need to work with your group on, that's going to be a great time saver and more valuable for the teachers that you're working with. And then finally, I do want to touch on the Mirror hardware platform we have. I know Megan's going to talk a little bit about how she has that. But one of the things that's coming soon, we're going to be doing a pretty big new release, and we're going to be kind of renaming it M2 or Mirror version 2. And so that reflection station is going to get a massive upgrade next month. And it's going to have a little bit more real-time feedback in there. So that's more something just to keep on the lookout for. We don't have it all ready to go now, but it will be out launching in the next month or so. You'll be able to see all the cool new things that M2 is able to do. So now we're going to move on into a conversation with Meagan Stass McDonald. So Meagan, I know I gave a quick little intro on you, but if you want to give a little bit of your background, that would be great. And then I'll kind of go into some of the questions that we have.
Hi. So I'm an instructional coach at Barrington Middle School, and I want to say this is my 8th or 9th year coaching. I was a math teacher before, and I got into this role, and it's awesome. I love this role. You get to work with students and teachers, so it's just the best of both worlds. But so yeah, we started using Mirror, and I'm excited to share the things that we've been learning. And I'm not an expert in any way, but continuing to learn. But everything I've used so far, I've really liked it.
It's great to hear and understand you're not an expert, and but just hearing, real feedback from users is always going to be useful. And again, as I mentioned a little bit ago, we're going to be having some really cool new updates soon, so you'll get to learn that stuff as well pretty quickly. So just in terms of, the first question, I understand that you first learned about Mirror and MirrorTalk at IdeaCon, I believe last year. So I'm just kind of curious, what were your initial impressions of Mirror when you saw it at that conference last year?
Yeah. So we saw the Mirror hardware, and that it looked like a robot, and it looked so awesome. They let us try it out, and immediately I was like, okay, like how do we get this? And I was shocked that they were going to let us take it for free just to like demo it. And I couldn't believe that they were just willing to give it so fast. And ever since, I was like, this thing is so cool. It's so cool. We use the app now, but like even just the robot the kids love. So it just the way that it looks is pretty cool.
Nice, nice. And so as far as the next thing, I'm just curious, what were some of the biggest challenges that you were facing, in your instructional coaching program that you felt that Mirror might be able to, or Mirror Talk might be able to help you with?
Yeah. So what's interesting is when we first started wanting to use it, we were so like student focused of like we're going to use this with kids. And all of a sudden like I was pretending to be kids to do the reflections to see what I was going to get back. And there was one day where I just had a coaching cycle, and I just really needed to just like get out my thoughts, and I was like, okay, I got to try out this thing, but you know what? I'm just going to use my own experience. And that's when it like the feedback came back to me, and it was awesome. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, why am I pretending to be a kid? Like, I could use this for myself. And my teachers that I'm working with could totally be using this as well. The questions, the feedback, like, it just was so useful. And what was interesting was that one of the challenges that we face as instructional coaches is like planning out our day with being able to be with teachers in the classroom, but then also be able to carve out that time to reflect with the teacher. And what we were finding is we just couldn't meet with a middle school. We have 90 staff members. So being able to kind of manage all of the teaching cycles or the coaching cycles that you're doing, but then also have that time for reflection was really hard when you put it on a calendar of a day of your time. And so what was nice is that, if I couldn't meet with this teacher right after that class period that I was with her when she was implementing a strategy, she could use the Mirror Talk to reflect immediately. And then when we met, and it might not have been that next period, but maybe it was later in the day or even a couple days later, we had that reflection that she had with Mirror Talk where we could look back on it and say, okay, in the moment, how did you feel this strategy went and how did it go for the kids? And it wasn't like she was like, oh, how did it go? Like she had the data that she had from Mirror Talk to be able to start the conversation, which in itself, in a meeting, when you only have 44 minutes to get that conversation started, to have that recording and that data where we could just jump in and we didn't have to like, oh wait, what day did you teach this? It was so helpful. So that has been really, really great for just kind of managing the time of how do you carve out this reflection when you want to do it instantly. So that was kind of one of our ways of like, okay, how can we use this with the teachers first?
Thank you. And kind of going along with that, I'm just curious, what was the reaction from your teachers when you first kind of brought this to them to start using?
At first they were really afraid because I don't know, AI, anytime you slap AI on something right now, like you either have teachers that are like, oh, awesome, I want to try it, or you have teachers that are like, wait, hold on, like what's going on? And actually we've experienced that too with some students. And so at first they weren't really sure what they were signing into. But as soon as they did that first reflection for themselves and getting the questions that were AI generated that fit so nicely into what they were saying, and then receiving the feedback and kind of like the next steps of what they could do, like it was sold. It was almost like that AI fear just kind of went away instantly because they saw how valuable the feedback was. So that the teachers at first were a little nervous, but it took one reflection where they were like, okay. And then they were like, oh my gosh, I can use this with kids and I can use this with my own teaching and my own self. And we had some teachers start using it in like their personal reflection, like there's just unlimited ways that you can use this.
Awesome. I'm glad to hear it. And, we get that a lot, hearing it's exactly what you said. Some people are super gung ho about AI, and then a lot of people are like, I don't know. People have seen Terminator and they're afraid of Skynet. So, but I'm glad to hear that, after one use,
It's
a lot
just
of them
one time. Like
were
that's my
happy.
biggest advice. Just try it and like the feedback is just such high quality that it really kind of puts that fear to the side.
Nice, nice. All right. And of course, for this question, I don't need like specific names or anything, PII and all that. But I'm just wondering if you can describe maybe a specific instance where Mirror or Mirror Talk significantly helped you, or maybe even helped one of your teachers that you're working with.
Yeah, so we do a lot of work with teams for coaching cycles. Like sometimes you're doing something and then all of a sudden their buddies are like, wait, I want to try that too. So what was interesting is recently there was a group that I was supporting and it was interesting because this one teacher was like, okay, I'm struggling with this, I'm struggling with that. And all these teachers in a PLC, it's great because everyone's just sharing strategies. And this teacher was getting like three, four strategies that she wanted to take in and try out. And so then she had me come in for a coaching, part of her coaching cycle. And I could just tell that like something was off. She was trying a lot at one time. And in the moment, I was like, okay, something's going on. But I feel like our coaching cycle has kind of stalled a little bit where I wasn't seeing her as like committed. And so I used the mirror reflect, and I was kind of not venting, but just talking through like, okay, this cycle, I'm struggling, like, I'm not sure what is holding us back. And there was questions that made me think like, okay, well, what else is this teacher trying to do? And I started listing all these strategies that all these other teachers had given her. And I stopped and was like, okay, that in the mid of the reflection, I'm like, oh my gosh, she's trying to do way too much. And so she was losing the commitment because she wasn't seeing success because there was just too much going on that, all these other teachers, they were comfortable because they had already been doing these strategies, but for her, she hadn't done those. And so rather than her like, okay, let's just focus on this one thing, she was just like, I'm going to do all of it. And so it was overwhelming for her, and it made me myself as a coach reflect and be like, okay, hold on. I need to approach this differently, and I need her just to focus on one thing at a time, because doing a lot at one time, you can do them, but are you doing them well? And so it kind of got me to have a conversation with her about, out of all of these things, like, what's your priority? Let's just start small there, and then we can work to the other things. And so that, just kind of thinking through, I mean, I'm sure I would have gotten to that at some point, but like it was just a quicker, like I did one reflection and it made me stop and think like, okay, hold on. She is doing a lot and it's too much, and let's just baby steps. So it just kind of thinks, it helps you get out of the box of like you freeze, and it gets you to move forward. And so that's what I needed at that moment. Instead of just being like, okay, what do I do? Like it helped me really truly think deeper into the situation, in a way where I was making a better decision of what I was going to do with this cycle.
Awesome. Well, that sounds great. As I said, I'm a former teacher as well, and I completely understand having five different suggestions coming at you and trying all of them. So the fact that it was able to, you were able to, while you were reflecting in real time, kind of understand that. I'm sure that was also something that that teacher appreciated, you recognizing that, because sometimes that's hard to bring to somebody. It's hard to bring to them that, like, I'm struggling because you gave me all these suggestions. Like, you're trying to help, but sometimes it's hard to, vocalize that. So helping you realize it and not making her saying it, I think that's great.
Yeah.
Um, cool. Next question I have for you. What would you say are your favorite features of Mirror or Mirror Talk?
That team, you called it a team learning summary. I have always referred to it as the meta-analysis card because I didn't know what it was called. But the team learning summary is awesome. We had spent, before it became a feature, we had spent so much time reading through all the cards and then making our own judgments of like, okay, everyone's pretty much saying this, and like, what could we do? And now that it's just like instant and you have that, and it gives you some direction of like, okay, this is what all of your reflections are saying, and here are some next steps that you could do. It's it's awesome. And it's actually high impact strategies. The strategies that they are giving teachers are high impact based on research. Like it's I mean, hopefully it doesn't take my job, but like it's great. It's great that like a teacher can sit there and read that. And then when I meet with that teacher, she can say like, hey, this is the strategy that it was talking about. Like, can I get some help with that? It's great. It's very helpful, very helpful. The other thing that I would say is the languages that they keep adding, that has been really helpful for students and teachers to be able just to reflect without having any barriers. You can reflect in your own language, and not have to sit there worrying about like, okay, what's the right word for this? Like, and then to receive the feedback in your own language, like that to me has been really, really awesome for our students, but also our teachers.
Awesome. Do you have a lot of ELL students in your district?
Yes, yes, yeah. So many languages, like I don't even know the numbers, so many different languages too. So it's been very, very great to be able to tell these teachers like, hey, here, you can use this, and we can have them reflect, and they'll get the feedback too. And what's nice is that it then translates it for the teacher. So the teacher doesn't have to sit there, like she just opens it up and it will tell her, okay, this is what the student said. Here's some feedback that the student received. And here are some next steps that you can do with these students.
Awesome. And we are always adding more languages. So, if you're realizing that there's some that we're missing, I would definitely suggest reaching out and letting us know, and we can work on adding those as well. A couple more questions for you before I kind of open up the Q&A. One, I guess I would say, what are some of the biggest improvements, whether it's, from individual teachers or in your coaching cycles or anything like that, that you've seen since you started using Mirror and Mirror Talk?
Just the habit of reflection. I think we all say, oh yeah, I reflect, like, oh, on my drive home, I'm reflecting, but it's like, what are you doing with that reflection, and how are you learning from your own experiences? I think that I've seen a huge difference with teachers that are using it and even students using it. You're actually doing something with your reflection. You're moving forward in a way where you're making better decisions, whether that's instructionally or in your personal life, which it's funny, people are using it in all different ways. I just feel like it's so easy to jump on to reflect in the moment when you're like, oh man, like instead of me venting to the teacher down the hall about what's going on or venting to my coach, the other coach in my building, you talk in circles when you're venting to a friend. And with MirrorTalk, that's not what it is. It's getting you to get out of that framework and kind of move forward. And that's just so healthy. It's just a healthier environment, right? Like you're not toxic, like you can do something with what you're learning.
Definitely. I love what you said about it getting you out of that mindset because, you know, we've all had our teacher BFFs that we are like, oh my God, I can't believe this, blah, blah, blah. And they just kind of
Keep
go
going.
back with their other problems. And it's just kind of a back and forth. Whereas this is going to say, okay, I hear you. And here's some things you might be able to do. So I love that you brought that up because I've seen that too. One
100%.
last question that I have for you, and then there were a couple that were in the Q&A that I want to get to. I guess what would you, how I want to say this? What advice would you give someone who's considering using Mirror Talk but might be a little wary or gun shy about, taking the jump into something like this?
I would say just try it out. Like try out the personal space, try out the reflections. It's so easy to set. I mean, it's so easy. But even like create your own and like send it to someone just to see like how it is. I honestly, it's just taking the risk. It's so worth it. But truly just experiencing the questions and the feedback. That's what sold the people we're working with.
Awesome. Thank you. So I'm going to move now into the Q&A. Let me go back into that. So a couple questions that came up. One was, other than having or other than not having enough time for reflection in your coaching cycles, can you think of any other situation where Mirror Talk has helped you solve a real problem in your coaching program or made you change something about your program? Perhaps a problem you didn't even know you had in the first place.
Yeah, so a nice feature in your Mirror Talk is, oh my gosh, I can't think of the type of reflection. I think it's core. It might be the core reflection where you basically talk about something and then all of a sudden it will tell you like you're assuming that blah 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 blah. And I actually was using it to plan a meeting for a group of coaches and it was about reflection and it actually told me you're assuming that everyone values reflection and like you might need some research to back up why reflection is even important. And so for me I was like, oh my god, I am like, I just thought everyone was on the same page, but I needed to add that. So it gives you these assumptions that you don't really realize that you're saying or that you might have, and maybe you don't have them, but it just kind of gives you to think like, oh, okay, like I do need to think about that. And I haven't thought about that in that way. So I had to adjust how I was going to approach these coaches when talking about reflection. I needed to add that research. Um, so yeah, the assumption feature is really great.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because I've had that too. I've done my own reflections and I've gotten certain things that are like, well, it sounds like you have this assumption or this bias going into it. I'm like,
I
yeah, you're
know.
right. All right, one last question in the Q&A is, have you observed any teachers be proactive enough to implement any changes in their daily instruction solely based on their reflection data or feedback with Mirror Talk before they met with you?
Every time that a teacher gets that feedback, they are, because it's from the kids, or I'm sorry, the teachers are using with students. When they get that meta-analysis that tells them to try different strategies, instantly they're thinking like, okay, like I could try that. So every time we've met with those teachers and they show us their, I'm sorry, it's called the team learning summary. Every time that they see that, they're always asking, hey, I want to do this. This is what they're saying that kids are saying that they want and that they might need. How can I do that in my classroom? So it's just opening up those coaching cycles. It's giving us more opportunities to get more teachers sold into our coaching cycles.
Awesome. Well, it sounds like that you've had some great experiences with it. So we at Swivl are really happy to hear, we do this. We really want to help teachers and help coaches and admins, and we're all trying to, do the best for our students out there. So it sounds like it's really helping your district, and that is great. So yeah, I just want to thank you very much, Meagan, for your time today. I'm sure getting away, you probably have 25 emails waiting for you when you get back. So I really appreciate your time. And I want to thank everyone else for coming to our session today. A couple last things before you guys run. If anyone is going to be at IdeaCon it starts on February 17th in Schaumburg. I will be there along with one of my colleagues. The new M2 will be on display there. So if you want to check out and hear some of the new things we'll be doing, definitely come stop by our booth. And then Meagan will also be doing a session at IdeaCon. So if you would like to learn more about how they're using it in Barrington, you can go to her presentation that afternoon as well. It's on the afternoon of the 19th at 1 o'clock. So thank you all for coming. If any of you would like to connect, you can go ahead and scan that QR code and you can set up a meeting with me, and I can, go into a little bit more detail. As Meagan mentioned, last year she did do a trial of MirrorTalk and the Mirror device itself. We are still doing those, so if any of you are interested in trying it out in your school, as Meagan said, the best way to kind of get past some of that stuff is just to try it. So if you do want to, take that plunge yourself and try it out, uh, reach out. We're happy to help you get that. We're happy to get into your hands and let you see if it's going to work for your uses. So thank you all. I appreciate everyone's time and enjoy the rest of your afternoon.